pledge allegiance. With the flag ain't my king. Yeah, let's talk about it. Street corner sermon, breathing out these truth vapors. See the system sending sons to die for the papers. Another war they made, another soul gets traded. While we building up a kingdom that is never faded. They draw the party lines, wanna know which shot I'm taking. But the cross on my back is the only statement I'm making. Love your enemy, that's a revolutionary order. Wash the feet of the one who stands across the border. They got their thrones and the crowns, their empires of sand. But the kingdom of God is the ground where I stand. So when they beat the war drums and they ask for my hand, I say no king but Christ in this promised land. Check the posture.
Well, we are live here tonight in the green room, and I'm kind of hosting tonight, but also kind of not hosting tonight.
I was expecting to host, Jacob, actually.
Yes.
Did we get our wires crossed?
Well, I'm not hosting, but you didn't start talking, so I thought maybe you got stage fright.
I was making sure that I'll be honest, I was over in another tab making sure that the Substack was running, and it was. So
I am just running tech support tonight, and I reluctantly am giving the reign over back to Doug to host a green room for the first time since the last time you hosted it.
which was probably last year at least. Yeah. No. Welcome to the LCI Green Room. I'm Doug Stuart. I'm going to be hosting for real tonight and give Jacob a break so he gets to sit in the guest seat. And I do thank you, Jacob, for getting the tech going, because I didn't do it quite right at the first when we started. So basically, we are here to talk about the next edition of Faith Seeking Freedom. I'm going to hold up both copies. I actually ended up with one actual copy in the mail, which is this one, and hopefully it'll show. Okay, there you go. It's kind of like shining with my light there. The other 100 of them copies are still like delayed or something. But here you go. You can see both copies of this book. The original copy, if I can focus, here it is. The original copy is only 102 questions, and the new copy is 230 questions. So we have a lot of questions that have been added to this book because we had lots of questions since the original book, which was in 2020. So in order to do that, though, we needed more writers. And those two writers are here with me tonight. And I hope you get to know them a little bit. Many of you probably already know some of them. Well, some of them. There's only two. Something about them. Sorry, I'm losing over my words here. Jacob Winograd, he hails from a Reformed background. He's been involved with the Libertarian Party. He's a prolific podcaster, the Biblical Anarchy podcast, often every week here in the LCI Green Room. And he has grown his and even LCI's audience over the past several years. He's grown the audience faster than I could, even my audience. He's helped us grow. So, Jacob, I am super glad that you are now part of the Faith Seeking Freedom author team. And we also have Cody, who is an author, a scholar, and mostly a gentleman. And he's also co-host of the Libertarian Christian podcast with me. He hails from an Anabaptist background. So the added diversity to the team has also been, a real blessing, to be honest. So, guys, I want to start a little bit with just a brief backstory for each of you. I'll start with you, Jacob. What was your bridge into libertarian Christianity? If I could use that phrase, give someone like the 1 to 2 minute. Here's how you became a libertarian Christian.
It's the very common Bernie Sanders leftist to vegan to anarcho-capitalist pipeline that I'm sure.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
I'm sure like 3 other people have ever ever done in their lives. Yeah, I mean it's funny because and people can find my longer origin story, but I do, when I discovered libertarianism, I felt like, oh, this is basically kind of what I've always been searching for. But at the same time, I totally stumbled into it by accident, by way of being born on the right, and then being disenfranchised by the right, going to the left and being even more strongly disenfranchised and kicked out of the left, and eventually, like, I never identified as a moderate. I identified as like an anti-war, and I thought I was a anti-market person, but really I realized that my problems with markets were not markets, but actually just the statist corporate nonsense that distorts markets and creates all the problems that we have. So, you know, I traded in Bernie Sanders for Tom Woods and Bob Murphy. So there you go.
All right, good. Cody, same question. How about you?
Well, so I mean, I have a similar story in a sense, because I think, I mean, for me, kind of going through high school and everything, I was just very anti-authoritarian, but I wasn't very systematic about it. I didn't necessarily chase down, you know, what it meant to be consistent about that. So I would swing a little bit between kind of far left and sort of libertarian, but maybe, I don't know if I really fully understood what it meant to be libertarian. But you know, when I was in high school, I made all these kind of like conspiracy theory and anti-war documentary movies, and I even had one featured on Infowars.com, which is one of my claims to infamy. But I think for me it was just about kind of working through some of the objections I had to libertarianism once I fully understood what it was. And you know, a lot of that stuff, you know, I think I still in a lot of ways have the heart of a progressive, in that I care about a lot of the issues that progressives care about. I just don't think that progressive politics is a good way to get there. And so what I think what I sort of found was that libertarianism provided a lot of those kinds of answers, and was, I think, also much more consistent when it came to being, you know, anti-state, anti-war, anti-violence, that kind of thing. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I got here.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm gonna give you the next question then, Cody. How do you think your theological tradition, hailing from the Anabaptist peace tradition, has shaped and, you know, sort of your political instincts to become a libertarian? I realize that we have an upcoming book that is going to share this a little bit, but and then you also have written things about this, but just briefly share that with us, with the audience.
Yeah. So, and that this question and the last question, you can also get into fuller detail in my LCI published book, The Anarchist Anabaptist. But you know, it's interesting because, like you said, we do have kind of a top secret project we're working on that goes into some of these questions a little bit more, the different approaches, and kind of weighs into libertarianism from kind of a Christian perspective. And you know, there's a lot of things that you know, will get Reformed people, Catholic people, Wesleyans to the same place, which is that kind of libertarian Christian place. But we get there sometimes through different avenues, because we see things a little bit different. So the Reformed tradition, I think, is very focused on, for example, systems. They have different tools in their toolkit, like ideas like sphere sovereignty, whereas like a Catholic is going to be thinking about subsidiarity. Those are just very different approaches to the way, you know, societies might be organized. And so for me as an Anabaptist, I think, you know, I've argued that Anabaptism is kind of like a proto-libertarianism in a lot of ways. They came to a lot of these conclusions that libertarians eventually came to, but I think they did it just through reading the New Testament. And so, but I think this sort of a suspicion of the state, a commitment to nonviolence, and I think also just this kind of idea that the church should be a separate, distinct kind of a community, which you know, feels very agoristic and voluntaristic. You know, so there's all these kind of things come together, I think, to as a way into libertarianism. It's a little different than the Reformed way, but I think it's good to have it as part of that conversation, so we can think about what everybody's bringing to the table. Because you know, that's the great thing about LCI, is it's not just Anabaptists, it's not just Reformed bros, it's not just Wesleyans or whatever. We can all kind of bring our own insights to this conversation.
Jacob, how about you? How does your theological tradition fit in with your libertarianism?
I don't even know if it's, I don't know how long I have to be Reformed until I can consider it my tradition, because I wasn't raised in it. But I mean, I'm being kind of pedantic there.
Sure.
Because I actually, it was me trying to.
How about we go with your Reformed tradition? We'll just put quotes around it so that you can, you know, hedge however you need to for that. Well,
so it's funny because
make the real Reformed actually okay with you. No,
I became Reformed, or Reformed-ish, I guess you could say, during the journey I took to reconcile libertarianism with Christianity. So it was almost like I wasn't born Reformed, and I actually kind of like went into Reformed theology sort of kicking and screaming at first. But I found that the systematic approach and covenant theology and a lot of things that Reformed theology really emphasizes really help to draw out these sort of overlap and synergy that exists between libertarian political thought and Christianity, especially when it comes to, as I have taken a lot of time to write in my upcoming book, since every one of our answers needs to be plugging something else, because we're trying to be
Absolutely, man.
as we're trying to be as meta as we can be tonight, and every answer has to reference 3 other things that might be publicly known or not be publicly known.
I have a notepad here that's got my next book idea on it.
It's Libertarian Christians bingo night.
How many references? You can pre-order Doug's notepad idea after the show.
Notes on Liberty.
My upcoming book is focusing a lot on how I kind of put these pieces together, and I've always sort of like my current career choice and my other kind of career, I guess, as a podcaster and sort of layman theologian of sorts, has been like trying to understand the objections that people have to certain ideas and then creating the strongest answers to them. And that's sort of how how the Reformed tradition has become really important to not just my personal faith and study of Scripture, but also to my pursuit of like libertarian podcasting and writing. Yeah.
So, when was the first time either of you read the first book? It was published in like November of 2020, I think, is when we had it out. So I'm holding it up right now. It's a real thin book. Did you guys get it when it first came out? I think you guys were aware of LCI at the time, right?
Yeah, I got it fairly early on because I actually interviewed Carrie on my old podcast about it. Like, I want to say that December or maybe shortly after. It was definitely the winter of like right after the book came out. So yeah. I had her on to talk about it, and I had read it. I read it. I don't know if any of us ever read Faith Seeking Freedom like cover to cover. I've read the whole book by now, but I've always kind of jumped around from section to section, sort of thing.
How about you, Cody?
Yeah, I think the format to me was like, because it's very much like a what do you call it? A catechism, right? Like a libertarian catechism. So I think because of that, I don't think I read it cover to cover at first either. I think that when I took the closest look at it was when we started discussing doing a new edition. And so I was like, okay, I want to really get to know this thing if I'm going to be kind of helping work on it.
Yeah.
And I think, what I really, began to appreciate when I took a closer look at it is how systematically it lays everything out. And I love a lot of these new chapters that we're working on as well, because there's a lot of questions that people are going to come to. And what's funny, you've already gotten messages about, well, why didn't you address this question? So there's always more that we could do, but there's so much here in this new edition though, that I think it's going to be a really useful tool, much like you, Doug. And wow. I think it's gonna be a really useful tool for I think it's going to be even useful for libertarians who've been here for a while, who are still kind of working out some of these ideas. But I think especially for somebody who's new to it, or somebody who's kind of curious, or if you've got friends who you want to be able to put something in their hand to sort of say, kind of, here's where I'm at. One of the things that's really beneficial about not just this edition, but the last edition, is it is like I said, very kind of an ecumenical project. I was talking earlier about all these different paths to libertarianism. You're not going to find just like a Reformed perspective, or just like a Churches in Christ perspective, or whatever. It's going to be it's something that has come together through a collaborative process. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, I think it really does reflect kind of a large cross section of what the church is and can do.
Yeah. Jacob, since you read it earlier than Cody apparently read it a couple weeks ago. I have I'm just kind of curious, when you saw it, was our original intent was to help libertarian Christians have better answers. It wasn't necessarily as a proselytizing tool, although we knew it would serve that. And we knew the people just vaguely interested in libertarianism would be like, oh, I got a lot of questions. But the idea was, let's equip people who are already here to on our side to have these answers. Did it do that for you? And was there anything in particular maybe that you can share that like it helped you shift your views or hone in on, saying things, in a better way? Cody, you'll be able to answer this question too, but obviously I was making fun of you. Never mind. Go ahead, Jacob.
I think obviously the sections on abortion, which we've added to and even improved in the second edition, those were really helpful to me. And I think also I've always been passionate about, and the book, the original version did a great job of this, and the current edition obviously still does it, and it even has like a good bookend on at the end of the book that helps to cement this on like getting Christians out of the trap of being apathetic about politics, which can be apathetic because they think it doesn't matter, or being apathetic because they think that, well, it matters, but we can't do anything about it, and being like black-pilled about it. And I think that the current edition did a really good job at making convincing a Christian, whether they were libertarian or not, to just realize like politics is not just some kind of like, separate category of decision making and calculations about how to best use public resources, but that there's like, what does public resources mean, and two, like, these are moral calculations and decisions about people and have impacts on everyday people in ways that we have to care about as Christians. So I feel like that was part of the book that I've always really loved and really helped to shape sharpen my answers about getting, just because sometimes the challenge as a libertarian Christian isn't presenting libertarianism to Christians. It's just like getting Christians to talk about politics at all. Because it's just, especially because if you do it from a Christian perspective, it's like people are like, they don't want to talk about religion and they don't want to talk about politics. They especially don't want to talk about both at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and if your politics challenges the aspect of their Christian faith that they thought was settled, they're just like, I'm not ready. I don't want to think about this. Not necessarily because they're antagonistic, but because they just don't want to think about it. Some people don't have the mental energy to kind of do that. One thing that I think I would say is an improvement in the book, and I will say that the original chapters, I'm just going to read the original ones here. Why should I care about politics? The second one is the libertarian basics. Chapter 3, what is government? Does a free society have limits? Is capitalism problematic? These are all questions in the titles, and many of them say, what about public goods and services? What about nationalism? What about social justice? What about immigration? They all start with what about, because that is often like, what about the roads? The quintessential example. What we did with the new edition was, we have most of the same questions and then 130 more. There are only 2 chapters that have a question as the format for the chapter. One, why should I care about politics? And then the very last chapter is, I read it right here because got to make sure, how do we get to a freer society? So everything else is just, here's what we're talking about. And so I feel like that is, maybe that's an artistic or aesthetic choice or something like that, but it basically bookends the way in which we want people to think about what we have as content in this book. Why should I care? And how do we get there? And it kind of addresses the 2 things that you basically said there. Cody, anything from the original book that you found useful to you as you eventually read it?
Well,
this is going to keep on giving for a while, actually.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, as I was sitting there talking, I was actually looking through the table of contents, and I was going to pick one from the new edition that I really liked, which was the chapter on America, because I think this is as this is the 250th anniversary of the United States, and so it's appropriate that there is this question about this chapter about the American Revolution, the U.S. Constitution, and it kind of opens up these questions that I think I'm having, and a lot of libertarians and libertarian Christians are having, which is like, what does it mean to be patriotic, and is it like appropriate? Like, do I have a reason to feel patriotic or not? And I saw there was this polling going around that 90% of conservatives consider themselves patriotic, and a much lower percentage of people on the left feel that way. And I see that, and I sort of think, well, where do libertarians fit in that? And I think the answer is we're kind of across the board, right? Like there's some libertarians who are just like, the state sucks and America sucks. And then there's some libertarians who, love the Constitution and think, oh, this is, a pretty good idea. And, it's close enough that we should appreciate it. And so I did value that, that addition in the new edition. So that's one I just kind of wanted to mention.
Yeah.
You kind of changed the question to be about the old stuff. So I had a more ready answer for the new stuff. But
oh, I see. Well, give me your answer for the new stuff then.
That was the new chapter that I really liked.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see. Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Yeah. But I will say, as I was because I was part of the team that was kind of helping go through and kind of do, when it says see chapter this for this question or whatever, there were things that kind of stuck out to me reading through it again, and I did like the chapter on capitalism a lot. I think there was a lot that was really valuable there, specifically in approaching it from a Christian perspective, because there's a certain idea about what capitalism is, that it's related to greed or sort of taking advantage of people or something like that. And so to be able to express
what it's not just that.
Yeah,
there's so much more.
yeah, that's just the good stuff. But I really loved that approach to kind of bridge that gap for the Christian who maybe has heard the word capitalism used in a very negative sense and doesn't really understand what its history is and what it's pointing to. People talk about capitalism like, it wasn't until 1776 with the publication of Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations that people figured out they could be greedy. Right? It's like, no.
Yeah,
people have always been greedy. Capitalism was the idea that you don't actually have to steal.
You can channel
people and beat
to
the crap out
productive
of them.
uses. Yeah.
Right. And so I love that chapter on capitalism. I will say, and I'll just say this just because Jacob's here and I can pick on him a little bit. The change to get rid of a lot of the questions, I feel like that appeals to you because you're not Reformed. Because in Reformed, people love the idea of the catechism with the question and the answer. That's sort of like a staged sort of thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to ask this question, I'm going to get this answer. But
the chief end of man is to make billionaires wealthy. Is that what we have in this catechism? No. Jacob, do you have any responses?
Well,
Cody called you out.
I mean,
you can remark on the process because I actually, it's kind of my next question is like, what was it like working with this process that you were a little unfamiliar with because you weren't on the OG team, and it was a bit. I mean, we had done it 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and the addition of you two, you guys had to sort of get your bearings on like, well, how is this going to work? And there's also these original questions that I'm sure you wanted to tweak a little bit because everybody kind of did. Which we kind of little bit tweaked, but not a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so like there's definitely stuff from the old book that, I mean, no one's ever going to be fully happy with it. And there was some stuff that which I think it's fine now that we have the project we've mentioned, not quite by name, but referenced to 4 times now about the 4 different views to libertarian Christianity that's coming out is going to do this anyway. I was kind of like, I think when I read the original version, I wasn't against it, but I thought it could be better. And then I revisited it during the writing process on like the question on like how we address Romans 13. And I thought that it gives the answer, which is I think the more traditional LCI answer. It leaves some things off the table that are more from, I guess, like mine and Carrie and Greg's perspective, but then that's fine, right? So there's obviously going to be things in other answers in the book where people could say that more of their view maybe isn't represented there, but you win some, you lose some. The process itself was really good for the most part. I think there's probably like 2 sections where it was difficult. One section for me because there were just opposing views that we had to, not like directly opposing, but just slightly at odds ways of like different vantage points of the same thing and wanting different points of emphasis in the immigration chapter and in
there's streams of arguments, right? Like you can even somewhat get to the same place, but if you feel like your way of getting there will capture more people, you're gonna sort of lobby for that way of approaching it.
Right. And so like I was trying to write some of the economics questions as a former left-winger who used to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Right. And so and I'm happy with where we ended it up. I think like the objections that Dick and Norm gave me were good, and we workshopped it to a way that like steelmans the opposition's arguments, addresses their points head on, and thoroughly rebuts
Yeah.
them. I think. Then you just had other sections like the culture war section that I helped write with Carrie, where the issue was just that we didn't really disagree on anything. There was just so much we wanted to address, and then figuring out how to not make that chapter just a book to itself was a bit of a process after we spent a long time brainstorming the different things we wanted to address.
Well, and Doug, I'll mention this now that we've let the cat out of the bag a little bit about a potential Views book coming out.
It's okay. We can talk about that book. It's fine. I mean, we're not here to talk about it, but it's fine to tease it. It's great.
We can't say its name.
Yeah.
It's Voldemort.
Well, so but one thing I'd mentioned to you, Doug, about, because I was thinking about how that's different from the Faith-Seeking Freedom book. And with the Faith-Seeking Freedom book, I think what you do have is something that's kind of homogenized, because we're all coming together to say, what's an answer that we're all comfortable with, right? And like at the end of the day, there might be something I would have said a little bit differently. Like, I'm a pacifist, so there's stuff in there that I don't love, right? But because self-defense and guns and things like that, which is just not my thing. But I'm comfortable with it, because at the end of the day, it represents where we are as a team. And there's things that we might do a little differently, but it's a great book. It's not something you're going to give to somebody and feel like, okay, well, but this person's Reformed, they're not going to like it, or this person's Wesleyan, they're not going to like it, right? There's something. Right. It represents, I think, that broad cross section of not only Christianity, but I think libertarianism as well. And so, there might be little things you'd say differently or whatever as a reader, but overall, you're going to find that this is a really good resource because of that process. Whereas I think with the Four Views book, it's kind of like I come in and I go, well, here's the Anabaptist approach to libertarianism. And then someone else comes in and says, well, here's the Catholic approach to libertarianism. And so what that sort of does is it lets each kind of difference stand. And so, Romans 12 and 13, as Jacob mentioned, I think that's really the biggest difference between a kind of Anabaptist / restorationist approach, and on the one hand, and a Reformed approach on the other, because Reformed libertarians and Anabaptist libertarians just see Romans 12 and 13 differently. And so I think with Faith-Seeking Freedom, one answer had to win out a little bit, I think, just at the end of the day, because it's a little bit complicated to try to say both. But I think what we ended up with was really good for that sort of, like I said, the homogenized, this is where we're all kind of coming together. But those who like the idea of tension and these sort of more complicated discussions, I think we'll also appreciate this other book that we've got in the works.
If you want to see a fight, buy our next book also. It won't be a fight, but no, what's interesting though is that you're right, it is sort of in some sense homogenized, but I don't want that I don't think you meant to do this, but I don't think that devalues it. In fact, I think you talked up how valuable that sort of perspective is. But for those who are kind of like, oh, they didn't give my perspective, or they didn't give like my preferred traditions, like angle on it or whatever. What we made sure we tried to do it to the best of our ability is at the end of every chapter, we have additional resources. And those resources, if you were to compare the resources against each other, they would all disagree on a lot of things. There will be things that are specifically from a Reformed perspective, or things that are specifically from an Anabaptist perspective, and those things would approach either Romans 13 or somewhere else, sort of at very different ways of addressing the questions. But what those resources are there to do is to sort of bolster, hey, here's a really good resource that we can all feel that at least some of our team can feel good about suggesting. Go explore. And you get to kind of choose how you want to sort of, we don't have footnotes in here, but it's kind of the follow the footnotes method, right? Like how do these footnotes kind of, chase down that rabbit hole? So, yeah.
Well, and to be clear, Doug, there's a lot of value in being able to sort of come together and say, despite our differences on so many things, we all feel pretty good about this document, right? Like there's something in here that we can all sort of at the end of the day sign off on. And I think that is really valuable.
I think we were also sharpened by each other as well. Jacob alluded to this earlier, where you and Norman and Dick had to get on a call and talk about things because the group chat, texting is just not great. We had some questions for Carrie about how she was putting some of the arguments on abortion. And once she clarified for that with us on a call, it was like, okay, yeah, now we understand what you're saying. Can you tweak it this way to write it so that everybody else understands it that way? There was just a lot of like iron sharpening iron in that. There was obviously some contention. We argued about things. We're libertarians. This book wouldn't have been what it is without some arguments behind the scenes. And yet at the end of the day, we all came up came out with a really stellar project. Jacob, I kept talking and you were wanting to insert something there.
Yeah, no, I think that yeah, that process was good. Again, we kind of already talked about it, just the different points of
Yeah.
of emphasis, and also sometimes it's just a matter of like there are just certain points of view that someone has that you haven't considered yet, and you got to make sure you're uh, addressing it, um, correctly, and handling certain objections, and uh, sometimes also the problem was, and I think I probably didn't do this as much as maybe Dick and others did, but trying to figure out ways to say things with a better economy of words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
'Cause sometimes it's like you're used to saying things a certain way, but you're like, yeah, but I can't say that in 200 words. The way I want to say it takes 500. So you have to like
Yeah.
and that was the problem with some of my questions. It was like I felt like if I had been asked to give the answer in 500 words, the certain trajectory I was going to go on would work. But then when I took my answers and whittled them down to 250 words, then it was like, well, now I've removed kind of some of the context for them that
Yeah.
now those particular phrasings or that particular way to handling a certain question doesn't make as much sense because it's missing connective tissues and pieces that we kind of cut out to
Yeah.
make it slim. So then you have to figure out how to repackage it, and so it was good. There's also with any piece of writing, there's discovery on certain things. Like there's some things you think you go into a subject and you know a fair bit about it, but then when you're writing it and trying to research it and just kind of make sure what you're saying makes sense. Like especially on the I was brushing up on the American Revolution stuff, like Cody talked about, because I helped write a couple of the answers to the questions there, and like I already knew kind of what I wanted to say, and then I'm like going back and fact checking certain things that I like believed to be true, and I was like, okay, well, it's kind of true, but also it's more nuanced, and so that's always a cool part of the process of writing any book and really writing any, even when you're scripting out a podcast,
Yeah.
is just going and continually adding things to the arsenal of knowledge that you have.
Yeah. This reminds me of, I think it's a Mark Twain quote, whether he said it or not. It's like, sorry, my letter is so long I didn't have time to write a shorter one.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the effort that we put to make these questions in 200 to 250 words or fewer. In pretty much every question, we fudged it a little bit because we did think that some deserved a little bit more. And there wasn't a way to be like, okay, well, this is really 2 questions, so we kind of let it go. But hey, we're libertarians. We do what we want, right?
Well, what I think that means is we didn't have to lose anything that was really essential, but what we still accomplished the goal that we set out to accomplish, which was we wanted to have concise answers to these questions, because I mean, Doug, you and I both know people that, like, when you ask them a question, they send you a link to a page. It's like 10, to a page where it's like 10 pages long, and like, here's the answer to your question.
Or a 3-hour Sunday school class.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm not going to read that.
You know who you are.
And so
we still love you, but you know who you are.
But the value of something like this is, of course you can give longer answers. There's more you can look into, and there's additional resources for that. But this is, I think, very valuable because we try to be concise and because we try to be readable, and so that you can sort of go, okay, well, this is a great starting point. I hadn't thought about this question, and this is a great answer, and I can dig into it more now because I know where to start.
Yeah. Okay, guys, what chapters did you guys mostly contribute to? I mean, off the top of my head, I actually don't know, except for I think the Christian nationalism, and you guys partnered on that one. Is that right?
Yes.
And what else did you write?
I wrote a little bit in immigration because we expanded that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The American Revolution, I helped write the 2 new
who wrote
questions.
That with you?
The American Revolution, that was Dick wrote a lot of those too.
Yeah, okay.
And the and he also wrote some of the expansions to the immigration stuff. And Cody and I wrote on Christian nationalism. Carrie and I wrote in the culture war and family and education, I think is what that chapter's called. And then am I missing any there? And then in economics, I added some there. And then I also helped at the last minute add the 2 questions on gun ownership, a topic that was not in the first book, as we established in the last live stream, Doug.
Yeah, we both had moments of like, wait, why didn't we cover this? And mine was the why should Christians say the Pledge of Allegiance, and yours was gun ownership.
And I assumed we did, because like it was a person at my church who asked, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna like go find the faith seeking freedom question on this and just send it to him. And then I was like, where is it? Where is it?
Well, okay. In our last live stream, I was doubtful that we did, and I'm like holding it up. I'm like, isn't it in chapter? Nope, not in there. All right.
Now we added it. Now Cody.
I'm going to leave it unsaid, but there is another topic that was recently pointed out to us that we did not cover, and I want to, the person who pointed it out endorsed the book and loves the book and understands. But I'm going to see over the course of the next few months. We're going to be at Freedom Fest in a couple of weeks. We're going to be at Acton University next week. We're going to see if anybody else notices that we didn't cover this topic. That's we'll see. Don't mention it, Cody. This is verboten here. Yeah, I want to leave it open.
We could publish a supplement in a year from now.
We can also, yeah. I mean, honestly, here's the irony of that whole situation is if somebody read the page before the book really starts, they'll actually know our answer on the question. Yeah. I'm just going to leave it at that. So
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you afterward.
After
I know. Well, see, that's the thing. Like it's actually anyway, we'll leave it go. All right, I'm going to ask you guys a couple other questions, and then we can wrap it up and do some promo. Tell everybody where we can buy stuff. What conversations do you think libertarian Christians should be having more of? Cody, I'll start with you.
Wow. I mean, I'm tempted to say, all the things that I talk about that I feel like other people don't talk about enough. But
okay, name them. I understand that's another way of wording the question, but I know it buys you time to come up with an answer. So
yeah, it does a little bit. I mean, I think, I don't know if this is dissipating or not, but a couple years ago, if you would have asked me what's the big issue in libertarianism right now, the big conflict, I would say it's not really even about an issue, right? Libertarians would argue about immigration or whatever. I think it's really about a posture toward the culture war. And it was basically kind of libertarians who sort of agreed with the right on the culture war versus libertarians who agreed with the left on the culture war. Like it was, libertarians who thought, we were kind of cosmopolitans, and even an issue like immigration, it wasn't even so much about policy. It was more just like, how do we feel about people coming here? Like, how do we feel about immigrants? And like, there's the kind of the far right answer, which is immigrants bad, and the far left answer, which is, hey, immigrants better than us. And so I think, to me, Christianity does have some, as a way of kind of cutting through some of these debates, because the culture war is really about, I think, starting with this sort of assumption about where things are going wrong based on my own preferences, my own fears, my own anxieties. Whereas I think Christianity, the Bible is able to cut through some of those fears and anxieties by saying, here's what it means to be part of God's kingdom. Here are the values that we have as Christians. And so I think that can, anyway, so those are the kinds of conversations I like to see Christians having. Is, how does the scripture teach or speak to these kind of culture war issues that, ultimately at the end of the day shouldn't have very much to do with libertarianism at all, because to me, libertarianism is kind of an anti-culture war movement, at least on the face of it. Culture war is, I don't like you and I'm going to send the government after you. And libertarianism, I think at the end of the day, is we may have our differences, but I fundamentally agree that you have the same individual rights that I have. But anyway.
Jacob, how about you? What conversation should libertarian Christians be having more of?
So I can piggyback and comment a little bit to what Cody said, and then also kind of add my own. I think that the culture war does really matter, and I'm not even saying. I think sometimes the people think the libertarian answer to the culture war is to like not get involved or to call a ceasefire or whatnot, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think there's certainly something to not becoming a useful idiot to the culture war, where you let the cultural issues make you into like a single issue voter of sorts, and you become just sort of completely consumed by virtue signaling to your particular side and demonizing people who aren't in your particular camp. um, but I don't think it means that those issues aren't important. Sometimes it just depends on the particular issue. Like, I think things like gay marriage and transgender issues and abortion, like these aren't sort of live and let live issues. They are very important issues that Christians and libertarians, like, I think there's right answers to them that we should advocate for. It's sort of in how we fight for those issues and how we try to win the culture war that really matters. And I think libertarians are kind of stuck in this sort of false dichotomy of either literally, as I kind of mentioned, becoming useful idiots for the state because they are literally just like, they become frontline soldiers in the culture war for one side or the other, or they just go, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, we need to have a conversation about what it means to know that these issues matter and to not sort of hedge on them and to not sort of cede intellectual or cultural ground. Like, we should be trying to push the Overton window. We should be trying to shape and influence culture. And we can also do that while rejecting the use of state power and violence to impose a particular culture on people. Like, we don't have to be, not to insult Cody, but I mean, he's thrown a couple punches my way, so I don't think it's fine. We don't have to be complete Anabaptists or complete Stephen Wolf Christian nationalists. Like, there can be multiple, middle grounds between complete isolationism and complete, Christian nationalist fusionism, so to speak. I would also say that I think that we need to be having more conversations about, which this book does a good job of, especially at the end, which I've already said, like what it means to pursue liberty and advocate for liberty in ways that aren't just like, well, when we get to Ancapistan, everything will be great. Like, we need more than that. And libertarians are often stuck either only in the land of theory, or they abandon the theory and they abandon principles and they just sort of, try to grab the coattails of power and, become statists and maybe sprinkle in a few of their favorite libertarian points in there. And so this is where you get things like Austin Peterson and the whole libertarian nationalist thing, which is kind of like me saying I'm a vegan meat eater in my opinion. But so I think that's a really important conversation to be having. And then I'm sorry, I'm giving you 3 answers here, but it's really important because of, as Cody mentioned already, that this is the bicentennial. I think having a conversation about what it means as Christians to, especially for those of us in America, how we relate to our status as American citizens, how we relate to American history. Like, I really enjoyed writing some of the answers for the chapter we have on the American Revolution, because I think we did a good job at like talking about the revolution in a way that doesn't whitewash it, but that's also not like a blue-haired leftist, like, oh, America's just evil, white colonialist sort of energy either.
Right. You're not going like Ta-Nehisi Coates or what's his name? What's the guy who wrote Stand from the Beginning? Oh, Ibram X. Kendi, but you're also not like baptizing it,
Exactly.
like what happened. Yeah. No, I hear you. So in a couple weeks, we're going to be at Freedom Fest. We're going to be sharing copies of the book through a donation. If you give to us at Freedom Fest, we're going to have first 200 copies. That's all we're going to have. So get there soon if you're going to Freedom Fest. But you guys are going to be there, and I'm kind of curious as you think about what we're going to be doing there. We're going to be standing at the table. We're going to be meeting people. We're going to be giving books out and things like that. And what is the sort of pushback / or other type of response you are anticipating getting the most of? I'll let you go, Cody, since Jacob gave me 4 answers in the last 3 minutes.
Come on.
What, 10
I
minutes?
just thought of 3 more too.
Oh, great. Maybe you should write a book of questions and answers.
Well, I do want to mention it was. I don't know that I fundamentally disagreed with a lot of what Jacob said about the culture war stuff, but I did, just to highlight that he and I gave different answers that were somewhat in conflict, and yet we still worked on a whole chapter together. And so it does give sort of an indication of the way that this book came together as a way of kind of smoothing out those differences and getting to the heart of what we agree on. But
Yeah.
so what kind of okay, so I was at Freedom Fest last year, and I had some people who were interested. I don't know that I got like a lot of kind of hardcore pushback. I mean, my expectation is there's definitely going to be kind of more old school, sort of secular, Ayn Randian atheist kind of libertarians there for sure. Some libertines. There's definitely more of a kind of a tradition, well, not tradition, well, yeah, I guess kind of like a trad core that's growing up into libertarianism. I had a conversation there with some of the folks at Reason, who the older folks who were like, they're like, it's so weird. All these young contributors we have are like, Christians and moms and like family people. And like, that was like the opposite of like what we were when we started Reason. So I don't think that Christianity struggles in the same way to find a place in libertarianism as it once did. I think abortion is still going to be one of those topics that's going to be divisive. Thankfully, Kerry Baldwin is going to be debating Michael Shermer on that very question and approaching it from a libertarian and women's rights angle. So very excited about that debate. Or it's not exactly a debate. We're not calling it a debate, but come on.
No, it actually, I think it is a debate.
Okay, good.
There was a debate over whether or not it's a debate. So
yeah.
And
I know.
so that's where we are.
I'm gonna show up selling foam fingers and stuff. Team Kerry.
Yeah. I'm not a preferred pronouns guy.
Hashtag I'm with her.
I like it.
That was good.
So yeah, I mean, that's an issue that's still going to come up. I think some people, for sure, are going to have that more libertine angle. This idea that, I can kind of maybe a little bit postmodern that libertarianism is about defining myself, defining who I am for myself, whereas Christianity puts more restrictions on what it means to be a human, what it means to be an individual. I think good restrictions. So those are the kinds of conversations I could imagine having, for sure, and also maybe just some of that stuff. Wasn't Jesus a socialist kind of thing?
All right, one thing you each hope people take away: they read the book, maybe not cover to cover, but okay, I don't mean it. Freedom Fest takeaway. Once they've read the book, what are you hoping reaches them the most, Jacob? Or did I let you answer the Freedom Fest question? I didn't even let you answer that, did I?
I don't think you did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and answer that first.
No, because I gave four answers for the last question. So.
Yeah, that might be why. No, you can answer the Freedom Fest one first, and then just while you're there, just answer the question. What do you hope readers take away?
Yeah, So I think to the extent that I don't know what we're walking into at Freedom Fest. I don't know if it's leaning heavy into the 250th, anniversary of America and all that. And if so, that's going to be kind of a tightrope to walk in terms of trying to not be needlessly inflammatory, but not wanting to necessarily like join in on the red, white, and blue Kool-Aid drinking at the same time. I think that I find myself in a really weird place, and I'm kind of just repeating what I said before, where I'm constantly getting into arguments with right-wingers these days and having to remind them that I'm more conservative than they are. And so to the extent to which there's a contingent of the liberty space that seems to be flirting more with imposing right-wing values and norms through state apparatuses and institutions, and kind of like trying to sort of push the idea that to advocate for liberty necessarily means that like your primary and the primary motivating force needs to be that you're anti-left. I mean, I just think we have to level up from that. Like, I feel like the left absolutely kind of had a hegemonic position in the American institutions and power and culture for like the late 2000s through the 2010s, and it kind of reached a peak and there was a necessary kind of correction and pushback. But I feel like it's like we have to stop playing that game. Like, we can't just, as much as and I've played that game, right? And again, I have to remind these people, it's not that I'm saying I'm a left winger and that I'm not I'm very much a right winger on all these issues, and I care about them. But there's more to. I mean, I mean, this is where I think Cody and I are perfectly aligned, and this is where I think he's been probably spot on this more than me, quicker than me. Is that there's more to liberty than just owning the libs, and more to Christianity than just owning the libs, and so we kind of have to. I mean, again, don't get me wrong. We can still own the libs, but we probably have to own the phony conservatives too. Is what I'm saying.
All right, Cody.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Libertarianism is about rejecting the duopoly and hating everybody. So the the types of people that I'm hoping will walk away with this book, specifically at Freedom Fest, but other folks as well. One group is Christian libertarians who didn't know that their faith could be reconciled with their political views.
Yeah.
Right. People who sort of thought, well, yeah, I'm a Christian and yeah, I'm a libertarian, but I didn't really think that these things went together, right? Like if there maybe there's a tension there, maybe they haven't even thought about it at all, right? It's just not a question that they've worked through. And so this will give them, I think, kind of a toolkit to begin to figure out how those two things can come together.
Yeah.
The other type of person is the secular libertarian who hasn't really given Christianity much thought. And that kind of person, I think, could pick up a book like Faith Seeking Freedom, and it could be like a kind of like a pre-evangelism or apologetics for them, right?
Yeah.
Like they kind of look at it and they go, oh, I didn't realize that Christianity had so many, taught so many things that I take for granted as a libertarian. And maybe I should be taking a closer look at Christianity than I have been. So those are two types of people that I hope get it. Yeah.
I will say that we've had one person comes to mind, but I know we've had a few others who have said that LCI in general and the book help them understand that they didn't have to leave their Christianity when they found something very valuable in libertarianism. And as we all know, when we have addressed this in the book, libertarianism is not a worldview. It's not a complete system of thought. It is about politics. And how does that comport with Christian faith? It can comport pretty well, but it doesn't replace Christian faith. It can't. And so that is something that I think a lot of people who have left libertarianism have sort of like felt like it failed to give them, and it's not intended to give them that. And so it's sort of rescued people from thinking they have to have only libertarianism and sort of abandon their Christianity as well.
Well, right. And I feel like, something I hope that people who read the book and who interact with us at Freedom Fest come away with, which piggybacks on what you both have said, is that there is, these are both necessary things. They're necessary in different ways, right? Like the gospel and Christianity are necessary for things for things that are of much more eternal and personal and spiritual significance. But that's not to say that libertarianism doesn't have immense value and importance in our lives as both Christians and as trying to live with our fellow human beings as well. And I feel like I'm going to be careful on how I say this because there's the wrong way to say it that oversells it. But I feel like I want people to come away thinking that like the best version of the argument that you need something more than libertarianism for libertarianism to work. I want people to come away thinking about that there's merit to that argument. And I think we present that in a very good way. And I also think that Christianity gives you a sort of like maybe framework from which to derive political values, but that you have to do the work of actually trying to derive those values and do kind of what we're doing here at LCI, right? Like having a conversation about like those values lived out and the logical implications and conclusions that come from trying to reconcile what all of Scripture says about human relationships and authority and things like that, and reconcile that to even what we know in philosophy and from reason. And that it's not that Christianity isn't enough, but it's just like so I can't really use the Bible to tell me how to fix my car. I can't use the Bible to tell me how to plan my retirement. right? You know what I mean? Like, or I can, but not in a direct way. There's kind of a step two in between there. There are biblical principles about stewardship and having a relationship to the future where you prioritize the future and your children and future generations more than just your short-term momentary pleasure and gratification. But then it's like libertarianism helps you to like find ways to apply those principles and see those lived out in the public square and in our communities in ways that it's like a specialized tool that that's really important. And I feel like people to that end, there's a lot of people who feel like libertarianism was like this fad. Like there's a lot of people like, oh yeah, I had my libertarian phase or something like that. And now I moved on to something more sophisticated, which is just the same thing humans have been doing for millennia, which is just, I'm just going to use violence to get people to do what I want. It's actually not that sophisticated of a political philosophy. And it's like, no, I don't think libertarianism had its time. I think it's like, what we are offering it, or if it did, it only did so because it was disconnected from Christianity, and what we're offering is like the correct combination of them in the correct ordering.
Cody, do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
I liked what Jacob said about how they haven't become more sophisticated because they've approached violence again. I sort of had an image in my head of a caveman saying, "Why use rock to build house when I could hit Oog on the head with it and take his house?" Well, so I don't know if this is kind of like a final thought or anything, but I did want to make up for what I said early on when I said that I didn't read the first edition when it came out right away, and what I want to say is, don't be like me, because I didn't think I needed the book when the first edition came out, because I kind of figured it was for noobs, right? It's like a question and answer, kind of like a catechism. And so I thought, I got this. Like, I'm listening to the podcasts, and, I've read some Rothbard.
That's why I don't read your books, Cody.
Right. You know it all. You look at this face and you think, he's not going to say anything very sophisticated. I've got this. I know what he's going to say.
Although I think sometimes people hide behind sophistication. Like they use the word, "Oh, well, I have a sophisticated, nuanced answer," and really all it is just overly simplistic, brain dead stupidity.
Yeah, well, that was a great description for me. So
that wasn't for you. I was sort of referring to the people Jacob was talking about, the people who moved on. Anyway, sorry to make your point.
Well, no, but I mean, just I kind of figured, well, this is kind of for noobs, right? And while it is a great introduction, like if you're a noob, get this book, obviously. What I'm going to say is there's so much that we cover that even if you've been here with us for a long time, I guarantee that you're going to have some great aha moments as you read it. And so what I'm going to say is get a hold of it, read it, get as much out of it as you can, and then pass it along to someone else who needs to read it. And so, I never want to say, you probably don't need this book. There's a lot of great stuff that's in this book, even if you've been here for a while. So
well, and even if it does go over some of the basics, like the greats in any endeavor are the ones who master the basics and do the basics better than anyone else, whether we're talking about baseball, basketball, football, swimming, even in business, right? It's just like, the thinking you're too good to go back and practice and re-familiarize yourself with the fundamentals in anything you do, even in our faith, right? Like just thinking like, well, I've been a Christian for 30 years, so I don't need to read the Gospels again. I've read them before, right? I don't need to read John 3:16 again. I don't need to read. It's like, no, I mean, you should probably keep going back and rereading those, because you might think you understand them, but like how many times, especially for like the Christians listening, it's like, how many times have you read a passage of scripture or listened to a sermon on a passage of scripture and you're just like, oh, okay, we're doing, this story again. I already know about it. And then the preacher says something, or you're in a Bible study and someone says something and you're like, oh my goodness, I never like thought about it that way. And so, we have to not, don't think you're too good for this book. Don't think you're too good.
Don't be like Cody.
Don't be like Cody. Yeah, I agree. That's good. That's good life advice. No.
I like that you sound a little hostile. Don't think you're too good for this. You're not too good for this. Who do you think you are?
Well, listen, I'm reformed, so I mean, if you think you're too good, then I mean, you eat
a little fire and brimstone and guilt.
Yeah.
No, and I mean, I agree. I mean, there was a reformed musician one time who said something like, we need to hear the gospel every day. I don't think that you need, and obviously this isn't the gospel. And it's also, I mean, there's kind of the core of like the basics, but there's also so much we've added, right? So there's, I think, application to a number of issues in ways that you might not necessarily have thought about or expect. The chapter that largely Carrie, I think, did, maybe entirely. I know we had editors, but on abortion is great. I think Jacob and I were able to, even though we approach Christian nationalism from somewhat different perspectives, I think at the time maybe you still are maybe a little bit more paleo than I am, where I'm very suspicious of that kind of whole thing, where I think you sort of think like, well, yeah, they're wrong fundamentally, but maybe maybe they have some insights or something. But we were able to come together, I think, and I think have some really kind of thoughtful interaction. And so even if you feel like you've got the basics, there's going to be some stuff in here that's going to be helpful for you.
Well, and one note on the Christian nationalism stuff, not to spoil the section, but I feel like the approach that we found was like, which you agreed to. I don't necessarily think the Christian nationalists have the best arguments, but they have points that, like, if we can steelman them well, there are people who get caught up in thinking, oh, the Christian nationalist, whether it's Wolf or Wilson or whatever, like they have these talking points that seem to have a lot of persuasive power. And I don't want to get those people who are kind of drawn into that too defensive from the get-go to not read through the entire chapter. And I think we were able to kind of, balance and bounce off each other our approaches in a way where it has the right approach, where it's not going to get people too defensive to read it, but I think we're biased, but I think the Christian nationalist chapter is going to be one of the biggest hits, along with the abortion one and the final chapter, because it's gaining prominence. I mean, people like Doug Wilson, Andrew Wilson, and others, like, they keep on getting on these big shows, and it's still kind of like a big thing that we have to talk a lot about, because there are a lot of people that just think like liberalism is dead and modernism is dead, and we just need to revert back to like Christianity between 1000 and 1600 really had it right.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, the people who, if that's what they think and they're post-millennialists, then why didn't Jesus come back then? I don't know. So, all right, we're going to leave it at that. So thank you guys for joining me on this live stream. And if, Cody, you can interrupt my ending.
Yeah, if you're going to end, I will.
I'm going to let you.
Well, I do want to.
There's a lot of interruption, guys.
That's sorry. Because while we're in the promotion mode here, we got this book coming out. We're going to be at Freedom Fest in July. We'd love to see folks there. If anybody is going to Acton University next week in Grand Rapids, there's going to be, I think, 4 people from LCI there. Yep. So
you, me, Alex, and Carrie.
Yep. So we'd love to see if you're going to be there. And you can't buy tickets just yet, but we're working on that. There is a Christians for Liberty conference that's going to be coming to the Cincinnati area in October. And we would love to see you there as well. We're going to have more folks from LCI. We're going to have some great interaction. The two things about this that I love is, first of all, the great, conversations and, that kind of stuff that's going to be happening from the stage. But also, if you're like me, as a libertarian Christian, as sort of an intellectual, it can get kind of lonely. And so what I really want to see from this is people coming together who maybe don't have a lot of people to talk to about this stuff that they're passionate about, and getting together with those kinds of people, and making contacts, and trading business cards, and getting on Signal chats with each other, adding each other's Facebook friends. So that's what
Jacob's not going to be there for, to get more Signal chats.
Yeah, there you go. But I think just to kind of build this into, not like a real community, right? Not just kind of like a theoretical community.
And,
well, you stole my line, because I was going to say all those things except for the conference thing. So I appreciate it.
And I promise people, like, I know it's Ohio, but it'll be worth it. It'll be the best. It's
close enough to Thomas Massig's district in Kentucky that it will be. It will feel.
It's barely Ohio. Okay.
Yeah.
Barely anything, isn't it?
Close enough to touch the hem of his garment.
Something like that. All right, gentlemen. faithseekingfreedom.com if you want to know where to pre-order the book, how to pre-order the book, and for that matter, read I wouldn't say a good portion because there's a lot of questions in our book. Read a good number of questions that are already there. They're from the book. They're listed by chapter, by number. There's a little bit of hyperlinking when they reference other ones. You can read the entire table of contents to get like, hey, well, what else are we missing? So yeah, faithseekingfreedom.com. You can get it on Amazon, pre-order through Kindle, and then also again, faithseekingfreedom.com will also lead you to where you can pre-order paperback copies. I'm holding it in my hand. It includes a discussion guide. We have an index in this particular one. 230 questions, the most of the out of 231 that we should have had. Toughest questions that libertarian Christians are asked. So thank you, Jacob and Cody, and we appreciate you guys hanging out with me and sharing a little bit of your stories and your contributions and your insights.
Yeah, thanks for having us.